This election is going to be no different. They've already started with the misinformation and the lies. We know that there's foreign interference, and I have to say to everybody listening to this, don't let them take your voice. Because I was part of the Senate Intelligence Committee when we investigated Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Black folks were targeted with misinformation.
Yes, everything is very dark and conspiratorial, very scary, very terrifying. And they're spreading fear. It's all about fear. It's the fear election. Trump's going to put you all in camps. They've done this before, too. They go around calling everybody fascists and Nazis and Hitlers, and then they loot your store, tear down your Greek flags. Your Greek flags? Yeah, you know. It's just the stuff that they do. Well, happy hump day and welcome. Hillary Clinton still scraping the dried vomit off of her own face. Wednesday mornings are ugly for her. But there's a lot to talk about for us, which is nice. And I've got a couple of different big stories I want to get to. The Democrats, they lie and they lie and they lie. Now, Republicans sometimes don't tell the truth. They don't always tell the truth because some of them are in politics too. But the Democrat Party, they're just a living, breathing lie. They're lies in loafers. What kind of loafers? Expensive. Bruno Mali loafers, I think. Bruno Mali. That's what O.J. was wearing when he, cut the head off of the mother of his children, his ex-wife. And he was still okay with the Democrat Party, wasn't he? He was just fine. Amazing stuff. Now, let me before we get into all that stuff, let me get to something else, because I was talking about Jamie Raskin, Democrat congressman, a real schizoid, a real sleazeball, not a truthful person, not an honorable man, not a good and decent man, but he's a Democrat member of Congress from the state of Maryland, and there's this movement, and it's not just a digestive movement, but there's this movement that the Democrats have undertaken, and that means the news media too. And they're pounding the table and yelling at Republicans and saying, will you accept the outcome of the 2024 presidential election no matter what happens, no matter what? You must accept the outcome of the election, which almost makes it sound like they know that it's rigged and that Trump is going to lose and Kamala Harris, even though the polls suggest that she may very well lose. The news media being front men and women and hermaphrodites for the Democrat Party, and they're pounding the table. You must accept the outcome of the election, no matter what. When Harris wins, will you accept the outcome of the election? As well, I don't know. Are the polling places going to be occupied by violent gangs of thugs like the Black Panthers in Philadelphia threatening people? Are you going to have people with blue surgical gloves stuffing ballot boxes and driving from ballot box to drop box to stuff the ballot boxes with stacks of absentee ballots and mail-out ballots? I don't know, there's going to be video of you guys cheating all over the place? Are secretaries of state going to come forward and protest that there were cheating efforts underway? I don't know. It's, people are using all kinds of analogies like, your car dealer, telling you that you got to tell him that you love your car before you buy it, or, tell the restaurant owner that your dinner was delicious before you have the food brought to your table, and, all these ridiculous things. Well, I don't know. We're going to have to see how Election Day goes. But the Democrats, in the form of the news media, they can't accept that. And again, they couldn't be bigger hypocrites if they went to school to become bigger hypocrites. But here is fake journalist Kristen Welker talking to Senator Marco Rubio, demanding that he accept the outcome of the election no matter what.
Will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter what happens, Senator?
No matter what happens, no matter. And now when you're sitting there and you're Senator Marco Rubio, how are you supposed to respond to that? They just, no matter what? Well, yeah, I don't know. Would you accept the results of your marriage no matter what? no matter what? Turns out that your husband is Harvey Weinstein or Jeffrey Epstein or Bill Clinton, or will you accept I know you're not even married yet, but will you accept the outcome of your marriage no matter what? I would think not. Kristen Welker then had Senator Tim Scott on. You'll never guess what she asked him.
Will you accept to commit to the election results in this election cycle, no matter who wins? Just simply yes or no.
It's just yes or no. And he's looking around like, what, is this a trick question? What kind is this, a loaded question? Just yes or no. And he's sitting there, and she doesn't allow any, like a period to breathe one breath before just yes or no. Said lunge over the desk and, do a Doug Emhoff on her. He shouldn't do a Doug Emhoff on her. Everybody knows that. Don't do a Doug. That's what it's called now. It's like doing an OJ. Doing an OJ used to be running through an airport real fast because he used to do ads for Hertz. And OJ would run and he'd leap over kids with luggage and things. And doing an OJ when you're rushing through and then doing an OJ became cutting your wife's head off with a knife and killing a waiter, and now doing a Doug Emhoff. You know what doing a Doug Emhoff is, right? It's like smack. And that's not good, but that's what doing a Doug Emhoff is. What is doing a Tim Walz? That's like a stolen valor thing and lying about everything. That, I was the head coach. I'm a big hunter. I was in Iraq. Yeah, none of those things are true, but when you're a Democrat, that's okay. And then you can go over to CNN, and Dana Bash had the future Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, on. You'll never guess what she asked him.
Will you commit to accepting the results of this year's election?
You must commit to accepting the results of this year's election. Also on CNN, Caitlin Collins had Senator Ted Cruz on. And I think I see a theme emerging here.
In 2024, will you certify the election results? Do you plan to object, or will you accept the results regardless of who wins the election?
Maybe we should have the election first, and then will you accept the results? I mean, it's like Michael Piercy, not this Sunday, but the following Sunday. The Chicago Bears are going to play the Washington Commanders on the gridiron. Will you accept the outcome of the game? Will you accept the outcome? Don't look around. Not just yes or no. Just answer now. Yes or no. Will you accept the results of the Washington Redskins, I like Redskins, Chicago Bears game, which will be a week and a half from now? Yes or no? It's completely ridiculous, right? And then it gets better because Axios, a left-wing outlet based here in Washington, with their headline, Scoop, I don't think you should have scoop and colon next to each other. But it makes Joe Biden think of ice cream, which is peculiar. And here's the scoop at Axios. Some top Dems won't commit to certifying a Trump win. What? What do you mean they won't commit to certifying a Trump win? But what if Trump wins? And this is from October 10th of 2024 in the left-wing Axios Democrat Party front group online. House Democrats railed against House Speaker Mike Johnson, the Republican from Louisiana, for hedging on whether a GOP-controlled House will certify a Kamala Harris victory. All right, and we played that audio for you actually when the Speaker of the House was on the television over the weekend, and they demand insistently, angrily, even arrogantly, certainly, will you accept the outcome of the election? And if you look around like, well, shouldn't we have the election first? Then they, you're a fascist, you're Hitler, you're a Nazi, right? And those Democrats, Axios writes, are trapped between their deep distrust of Donald Trump. See, they've got good reason, according to Axios, and their vigorous denunciations of any election challenges in the years since the January 6th attack. Now, keep in mind that the Democrats have challenged every presidential election in the 21st century that they have not won. That starts in the year 2000. And Florida recount hanging chads. The Supreme Court, Terry McAuliffe, the DNC chair, still says that in 2004, again, George W. Bush says that we won that election. And that's so they lost 2000 and 2004. And they challenged both of those elections in 2000 all the way to the Supreme Court. Terry McAuliffe, DNC chair, former governor of Virginia, still says that we won that election 2004. And then, you know, they won with Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. So they didn't challenge those. So those are perfectly good, right? And then they were supposed to win with Hillary Clinton in 2016, and they didn't, and Trump won. And they still say, Hillary Clinton still, you can be the best candidate and run the best campaign and have the election stolen from you. So those are the elections they've lost in the 21st century, and they've challenged every election that they've lost in the 21st century. But that's okay when they do it because they're Nazis, because they're fascists, they're Hitler. They really should be wearing armbands. Isn't it amazing? So Axios says, Democrat leaders, they say, seem maybe that they're prepared to certify a Trump victory. And, there are still a bunch of Democrats like Jamie Raskin, the radical extremist Democrat from Maryland, who's one of the lost Marx brothers. And he's on the House Oversight Committee, and he was the ranking member of the January 6th, or a ranking member of the January 6th committee. And he, just amazing stuff, this guy. He told Axios in an interview that if Trump won, he says if he won a free, fair, and honest election, but he decides whether it's free, fair, and honest, right? See? Then we would obviously accept it, Raskin said. But, he said, he definitely doesn't assume that Trump would use free, fair, and honest means to secure a victory. See? Because if there's anything unfair, then he'll object to it. Now, President Trump believes that there was plenty unfair about the 2020 election, and he has objected, and they filed legal challenges and so on. But Raskin says, well, I'll decide whether it's free and fair, and if Trump declares victory, I'll decide then whether I will vote to certify the election. Just amazing stuff. Another Democrat from Illinois, Jan Schakowsky, a total communist. She's like Eva Braun, is just the rhetoric that we use. She's not really like Eva Braun, but this is how we talk in political world now. See, she voted to object to George W. Bush's electors in 2005. That was the 2004 election that Terry McAuliffe objected to. And the Democrat from Illinois, Jan Schakowsky, she refused to certify. And now she says in 2005, January 6th, right? And now she says, I don't know what kind of shenanigans he's planning. He would have to, in any election, make sure that all the rules have been followed. So Jan Schakowsky says that if she believes that some rules have not been followed, then she would not vote to certify the election. And the news media is fine with Democrats saying weeks and months ahead of the election that they may or may not certify the election. They may or may not accept the results of the election. But they pound the table when Republicans are in front of them. Tell me now, it's yes or no. Amazing stuff. And there are more. Another Democrat, Jim McGovern from Massachusetts, an extremist, a radical, a fascist, says we'll have to see how it all happens because, he doesn't know whether he's going to accept the results of the election. Hakeem Jeffries, who's the Democrat leader, said, House Democrats will do everything necessary to ensure that the winner of the presidential election is certified on January 6th, right? But who's the winner? He gets to decide whether it's legitimate or not. Democrats couldn't be bigger communists if they moved to China. How much time did Tim Walz spend in communist China? Was he there for Tiananmen Square or was he not? Oh, yeah, he lied about that too. These guys. So the Democrats and the media, they're fine. Well, we'll wait and see what the election looks like, and then we'll decide whether we certify it or not. But if you're a Republican, now, answer now, because the news media is the filthiest, most corrupt institution in the United States of America, worse than the Academy Awards.
You can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, crazy story. I'm not sure how into this I'm going to be able to get, but the New York Times has an obituary today. Meghan Marshak dies at 70, was with Nelson Rockefeller at his death. She was at the center of rumors about the former vice president's last moments, but she remained silent about their association until she wrote her own obituary. Now, this is kind of a wacky story because it was a big rumor, and famously, and it was true at the time. Meghan Marshak, who was a young aide to Nelson A. Rockefeller, found herself at the center of a sensational conjecture about the circumstances of his sudden death in 1979. And Meghan Marshak died on October 2nd at the age of 70 in Sacramento, California. Her death at a live-in medical facility was announced in an obituary that her brother, John Marshak, said she had written herself last year and was posted by a Sacramento funeral home on its website. Mr. Marshak, the brother, her sole immediate survivor, said the cause was liver and kidney failure. Now, here's the thing. Meghan Marshak was, in 1979, a much, much younger woman, and was working for Nelson Rockefeller, who at that time was the former vice president of the United States. And the story was that she was performing an act of gratification upon Nelson Rockefeller at the time of his unexpected death, and called for an ambulance and so on, and was struggling to put Nelson Rockefeller's shoes back on when the ambulance people arrived. And it became kind of a wah, wah, wah moment, a crazy moment. And the New York Times puts it delicately, says that Ms. Marshak, who is widely believed to have been romantically involved with Mr. Rockefeller, had for decades remained silent about the circumstances of his death. But there's an update because she wrote her own obituary. It's now, American political history, kind of. Yes, sir. You know what? Before we get on to the next item, this Mark Halperin item, let us go to a telephone call. Let's go to Tom calling from Annandale, Virginia. Thomas, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Thanks. Thank you, Chris. Jamie Raskin and tongue bass and movements. I mean, I'm all for free speech, but there's got to be a line somewhere.
I understand your concern. I do. The imagery now, it's kind of left. It's kind of left to you as to whether you conjure up the images. But you're right. I apologize. That's an awful image.
I'm loyal enough to not change the station. My concern is with Brett Baer. I mean, this isn't you. This isn't Dan. This isn't Mark interviewing her. And I don't know. I a little concerned that he, I don't know, maybe has the toes in both waters as far as the Georgetown parties, et cetera, establishment, mainstream media, Georgetown group. Mm-hmm. So, and will he ask her some of the, tough questions? Why did you continue to proclaim, if you were in every meeting with Biden, every meeting all the time, the last one out, why did you continue to proclaim that he was serving as POTUS with no decline in mental acuity? Why did you continue to tell the American public that?
You mean to suggest that his brain was malfunctioning all these years and she remained silent about it, so she was engaged in a cover-up?
Oh, perfectly, absolutely. I don't think there can be any doubt on that. And I think it's one of the most egregious lies ever told to the American public. And in addition to, if along the lines, I think of, if you get the COVID vaccine, you won't get COVID. If you don't get it, you'll die. I mean, I think these kind of things, look, as you mentioned a couple minutes ago, Republicans engage in hyperbole, certainly Trump, hyperbole, exaggeration, lies. But Jesus, I believe that all that pales in comparison to some of the dangerous proclamations, statements, lies, etc., spewed out by her and her ilk.
Well, it's absolutely true. In Washington, people are fond of half-truths and hyperbole and all kinds of dishonest and misleading rhetoric. And you're concerned that Brett Baier, because you said he's got one toe in each party, toes in both parties.
Yeah.
The Georgetown crowd and all that stuff, Brett Baier is very much an established Washington journalist. There's no doubt about that. And he's, for those who don't know, he's interviewing Kamala Harris tonight at 6 o'clock in the 6 o'clock hour Eastern time, probably the second half of the 6 o'clock hour, I'm guessing. And I think it's supposed to be a 30-minute interview. I think it's supposed to be without commercials. And I think that he should feel a lot of pressure to conduct an interview that will be for the record, on the record, and it may be the entire record because she's not doing a lot of interviews, and the interviews she does do are fluff jobs and not serious journalistic interviews. So all of that matters, and I'm with you. I'm with you on all that.
Fluff jobs and/or edited after the fact.
Right. That's absolutely right. Like CBS, 60 Minutes, and then the other CBS interview. CBS is really they've just given away their journalist card, and the rest of them too. And then she sits down with Charlemagne the Misspelled God, Leonard, who didn't do. He asked a couple of questions, but then she just babbles. And he doesn't say, well, you didn't say anything related to the question I asked, because he's just another Democrat Party frontman, a fluffer, a fraud, not a journalist. And he's not supposed to be a journalist, but that's why she's doing these non-journalistic interviews. So I think there ought to be a lot of pressure. Brett Baier ought to feel a lot of pressure to make sure that this is the interview to beat all interviews. And
absolutely. Do you know, is this live, Chris?
That is a good question. I don't think that it is, but I don't know for sure. Jasmine is shaking her head and saying, "I don't know," but she's doing a quick Google search to see if we can find the answer to that question for you. It would be better if it were live, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chris, for everything you do.
You bet, Tom. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the imagery. Pre-taping an hour before, 1 hour before pre-tape.
My breakfast was it's an hour before, so it's not live. All right.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to hold my dinner down for that one too. Like I held my breakfast down for your imagery.
But you know what they've got to do though? They've got to release the at least online. They have to release the entire interview. Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything, Chris.
Yeah, you bet, Tom. Thanks for caring. Now let's go to, because Mark Halperin, formerly of MSDNC and various other places. He was at ABC. He's moved around a lot. He's got a big podcast now. I think he even does some things with. I know he does some things with Newsmax as well. But he sat down and did an interview with Tucker Carlson. On Tucker Carlson's program. But it's worthy of note, Tom, because he's saying the same thing that you just said, and that is the biggest. Well, I'll let Halperin speak for himself, but he said the biggest journalistic scandal in the history of journalistic scandals is the active media cover-up, years-long cover-up, and it's nothing short of a cover-up of Joe Biden's mental incapacity. and his intellectual decline, his mental decline. The news media was fully aware of it from start to finish, and they actively engaged in a Soviet-style cover-up. What's a harsher term than cover-up? I mean, they were sabotaging, perpetrating espionage against the American people on the highest level of American politics by just lying to the American people. But here's Mark Halperin, and he is talking to Tucker Carlson.
I think this is the worst scandal in journalism, American journalism history, because anyone knew what was happening. The public knew what was happening, and yet the cover-up continued.
Yeah. Now, Mark Halperin is 100% right in this particular instance. And again, he's talking to Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson is sitting there. They're doing this back and forth with video stream, right? And Tucker jumped in at one point. But the biggest scandal in journalistic history, and Halperin is not a conservative by any definition, and he's not a Biden basher by any stretch of the imagination. And he's just saying out loud what he believes to be true. And I would agree with him 100% in this particular instance. And here's Mark Halperin, longtime, political analyst, media figure, author, and talking to Tucker Carlson about the biggest media scandal in the history of media scandals.
He spoke to a dead congresswoman. I mean, what more do we need to know? A congresswoman who had died, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. He speaks to a dead congresswoman, and his press secretary says he spoke to her because she was top of mind because he was going to be meeting with her family. That's not forgetting somebody's name. That is a loss of acuity, which would disqualify him from being a museum docent.
Right. Much less having access to the nuclear codes.
So,
you may remember Joe Biden at an event at the White House, or at an official presidential event, and he called out, "Hey, Congressman, here's Congresswoman Jackie Molarski," and she had died a couple of months earlier, a Democrat member of Congress, and he called her out in the crowd, but she was not there because she was deceased.
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here.
Yeah, she just went out, and Biden asked whether a deceased congresswoman is at a White House event, and as you might expect, she wasn't. Jackie Walorski was not at the event because she had died in August, and this event was in September of 2022. And the news media said, well, shh, that's not a problem.
She was at top of mind.
If the late Congresswoman was top of mind, why was he looking for her?
Again, I don't think it's all that unusual to have someone top of mind.
I think we all totally get why she's top of mind.
She was on top of mind.
Top of mind.
Someone is on top of mind.
Top of mind.
Again, she was at the top of mind. Sometimes when you have someone top of mind, they're a top of mind.
Yeah, and on top of mind, which is not known phrasing, and at top of mind, no, but top of mind. So that's why Joe Biden called out the dead congresswoman and who was not in attendance. The Democrat Party and the news media, but I repeat myself, I got to tell you, and Mark Halperin, 100% correct, 100% correct there. Yes, sir. Now, we played for you the elements, the news media. Will you vow to acknowledge and accept the results of the presidential election no matter what happens? While there are Democrats over here saying, well, let's wait and have the election and see what happens, and then we'll decide whether we'll accept the election, right? But in the meantime, why would there be any question about it? I talked about it yesterday. Let's go to soundbite number 1. The Justice Department, you look like you thought I was going to go to something else. The Justice Department is suing the Commonwealth of Virginia, where Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin is the governor. And the government of Glenn Youngkin is in the process of going through the voter rolls to see if there are non-citizens registered to vote in Virginia, where they have in fact found thousands of ineligible voters that are registered to vote just in the state of Virginia. But Glenn Youngkin was last night on the Sean Hannity program, and he was asked, like, hey, the Justice Department is suing the state of Virginia to try to stop you from combing the voter rolls to see if there are ineligible voters, either because they're illegal aliens or just non-citizens who are residents of Virginia, which would be normal. There are non-citizens who are, residents of Virginia and Maryland and D.C. and all over the country. But this has been going on since a Democrat governor in Virginia signed the law requiring that they comb through the voter rolls every now and then to make sure that they don't have ineligible voters registered to vote. Glenn Youngkin last night with Hannity.
Here I am, a governor, mandated, and oh, by the way, proud to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and by law to make sure that we have clean voter rolls. And the Department of Justice shows up 25 days before a presidential election and says, stop doing that. To me, this is unprecedented.
To me, this is Hey, stop seeing if there are illegal voters on the voter rolls in Virginia, because it's a state that could go either way. And now the federal government under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Attorney General, who is, I think, perhaps the most corrupt Attorney General we've ever had. Hey, I know, let's go after Virginia and stop them from checking to see if everybody that wants to vote is there legally. The Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia is a great American, a Cuban American, whose mother escaped communism in Cuba, Jason Miyares.
This is a law that's been on the books in Virginia since 2006, signed into law by Governor Tim Kaine, a Democrat, and has been enforced within that 90-day period by subsequent Democrat governors, Ralph Northam and Terry McAuliffe. The reality is that we have a law mandating that the governor and the attorney general, as the chief lawyer for the Commonwealth, to make sure we have clean voting rolls. That's common sense.
That's common sense. That does sound like common sense. But the Democrats under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the attorney general of the United States are trying to stop Virginia from checking to see if everybody that's registered to vote is legit.
These are individuals that have positively affirmed to DMV that they are non-citizens. The DMV forms our Department of Elections. We then give that individual a notice saying, listen, you have indicated you're a non-citizen. Please fill out the affirmation of citizenship so you can be properly make sure you're on our voter rolls, or you're going to be removed. And so these are individuals that have self-identified they're non-citizens, over 6,000 individuals. And so this has happened. This has been a law on the books. And I think it's something we should all want.
And I'm so sorry about the Skippy stuff there. I don't know what that is, but it's something we should all be happy to do and proud to do. And then Jason Miyares said something that sounded familiar to me.
As we all know, common sense is very common in D.C. these days.
Common sense isn't very common in D.C. these days. I agree with Jason Miyares on that. Great stuff. He's a good public servant. He's great. Glenn Youngkin is, too. They're on Team America, unlike Kamala and Barack Obama and, Hillary Clinton, who's on Team Hillary Clinton. Amazing stuff. We still have Kamala coming up with Leonard the God.
This is a matter of common sense not being very common in Washington these days.
All right, I've got the mailbag coming up in the next hour, and Kamala with Leonard, the misspelled God. But right now, let's go to the telephones and to Jim, calling from Fairfax County, Virginia. Jimmy, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for taking my call. This probably sounds like a made-up story, but there are several witnesses at both voting booths that can attest to this. So I just voted over in Fairfax County, minding my own business, grabbed a Trump bumper sticker and some information, and I was walking to my car. Woman, normal-looking woman, walks by me and goes, "Oh, January 6th, convicted felon." And I go, and, turns around and scowls at me. And I said, oh, well, okay, thank you, but Black Lives Matter rallies, but riots. But do you have a policy that you disagree with? Would you like to talk about a policy? Start screaming, he's a blanking rapist.
You're eating your phone. You're eating your phone. Come on, I want to hear your story.
All right, sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So he's a blanking pedophile. He's a blanking racist. And just screaming, her face is getting redder and redder as I talk. I said, okay, well, if you just want to talk, if you want to speak talking points, have a nice day and I'll see you later, right? And she, a couple more obscenities, gets in her car, backs out, backs up to me, opens her window, and it's like, you're a effing fool. He's a dictator. He's a fascist. Blah, blah. And she said, I lost people. I lost my religion because of him. And I said, look, you're just being irrational. If you want to talk about a policy, that's fine. Just more screaming and yelling. And it was just, I said, this is so, I could see her ripping down Greek flags in a diner someday. And, I really wish somebody put it on YouTube, and I was looking around if anybody caught it, but I don't think anybody did. But 100% true story. There were a lot of witnesses, and a guy came up to me later and said, "Oh my God, the ignorance here is just unbelievable."
Wow.
Very funny election story. Fairfax Government Center about a half hour ago.
Wow. It really is just a mental illness, and they're violently, criminally insane. And this is a woman. She was, I'm going to guess she was in her 50s, right?
Yeah, but she was a white woman in her 50s. No, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", and I had the sin of having a plaid shirt on, probably.
That is just great. What a wonderful story. I'm very glad that you called in with it. Vote accordingly.